Hi there, scholars. We're going to go over a few other forms of inheritance patterns known as incomplete and codominance. The first one we're going to look at is called incomplete dominance. And this is just like it sounds in that one of the alleles is not totally dominant over the other. A really common example is in a certain form of flower called a 4 o'clock flower, where you could have red flowers, you could have white flowers, but you can also get pink. And the way that happens is if you take the two purebreds with contrasting traits. So if you look up at the picture, there's a red flower, and you can see that it's homozygous for the red allele. The white flower would be homozygous for the white allele. But when you end up getting a hybrid by crossing those two, then the phenotype comes out pink. So these flowers are going to have an intermediate phenotype or a blended phenotype when they are heterozygous. Okay, so let's work through a couple of examples. I'll help you out on the first couple. So if you read through the information on the page here, we have 4 o'clock flowers, which we just talked about, where if they are homozygous for the red allele, they're going to come out red. If they are homozygous for the white allele, they'll come out white. But again, if it's a heterozygous or a hybrid genotype, then they're going to have that blend. They're going to have an intermediate phenotype, which would be pink. So according to the question, we have this woman planting 4 o'clocks, and she saw that all of her flowers were pink. And so we want to know what the genotypes of the parent plants are. Okay, here's some boxes to fill in that we would use for our Punnett square. And the first thing we know is that all of the flowers of the offspring are pink. So we're going to go ahead and fill in that they are all heterozygous. So in order to become heterozygous, we know that they're going to get one allele from each parent. So we know that one of those parents is going to be passing on these big R's. They must get the little r's from the other parent. So this is the only way that we could get 100% heterozygous in our offspring. We know the parents must have been the red flower with the homozygous red allele and the white flower, the homozygous white allele. Okay, next example. Mrs. Fong is planting 4 o'clocks in her garden. And when the flowers bloomed, she saw 50% white and 50% pink. So let's figure out the genotypes of the parents. First, you'd want to fill in your boxes since you already know the offspring. So first we'd put in those 50% white. We know they're going to have the little r's there. Then we've got our 50% pink. Remember, the pink ones are going to be heterozygous. So we have to look where they got these alleles. They're going to get a big R from one of the parents. And then they're going to get the little r also from that same parent. So one of the parents needed to be heterozygous. That little r is coming from the other parent. And so the only way that this Punnett square would work out is if one of the parents was heterozygous and one of the parents was homozygous, which means that those parents must have been pink and white. All right, in our next example, we can see Mrs. Herman wants to have red flowers, white flowers, and pink flowers. So we need to know what the parent plant's genotypes need to be. First, let's fill in the boxes since we know what the offspring should be. So here's our red flowers, homozygous. And we know that is only going to happen if one of the parents passes on a big R and the other parent also passes on a big R. Now we can see that we need white flowers. So we're going to have little r's. One of the parents has to pass on the little r. The other parent also has to pass on the little r. By filling in the other boxes, the other combinations, we can see how we're going to get those pink flowers as well. So the parents needed to be heterozygous, both of them, which means they're both going to be pink. All right, the second form of inheritance we'll look at is called codominance. A common example of this one is with a certain species of cattle, where they can come with a reddish coat or they can come with a white coat. But if they are a hybrid, they're going to have both red and white hair. So it's different than incomplete. It's not a blend. It's that both of the alleles are dominant and both are going to be expressed. So let's look at an example. In the example of these cattle, when they are a mix like this with red and white hair, the name for that phenotype is roan. Okay, so read carefully through the information. We have white short-horn cattle have the genotype C with a W and C with a W. Red are going to have the C with an R, C with an R. Now, if they're heterozygous, C with an R and C with a W, that's where we're going to get this roan coat color with both red and white hairs. So she's breeding a red bull. So let's fill in the red bull. That red bull is going to, oops, sorry about this. Hold on one second. Okay, so that red bull is going to have the C with a big R, C with a big R. It's going to be homozygous. The roan cow is going to have a heterozygous genotype. And so then you just need to start filling in the boxes with the different combinations. And so you can see we're going to get 50% red and 50% roan in that next generation. Okay, next example, we're looking at breeding a roan bull with a roan cow. So remember that roan is going to be the hybrid or the heterozygous. So let's put our genotypes for the parents. Okay, sorry about that. So this would be the genotype for one of those roan parents. And this would be the genotype for the other roan parent. So they could potentially each pass on either the C with the big R or the C with the W. Then just put in your combinations for the next generation. So we could get red cows or red cattle, roan cattle, or white cattle. And it would be in these ratios or percentages. Okay, you guys should be able to read carefully through the questions and look at these examples with chickens. So pause the video and work out your answers. Okay, so after reading through and filling in your Punnett square, you should have figured out that the parents in this case would have been a black chicken and a white chicken, and when you cross those, you would have gotten these ratios in the offspring. For the next question, hopefully you figured out that the parents are going to be a speckled chicken and a black chicken, and by crossing those, you would have gotten 50% heterozygous speckled, and then 50% homozygous black in the offspring. All right, so just to summarize, we talked about incomplete dominance, where when you get a hybrid, it has an intermediate or blended phenotype. So the example was crossing red flowers with white flowers and getting pink flowers. With codominance, on the other hand, the hybrids are going to express both alleles at the same time. They're both dominant. So if you were to cross white and red, you're going to have flowers that have both red and white.